Here we go. It is episode 97 of the John Canzano Show. I'm just trying to think of a great number 97. 97.
Feels like a defensive tackle.
And you know? I've got a guy. For some reason, I have a Niners player in my head, but I can't pull the trigger on who it is.
Did J.J. Watt wear 97? Is he in 97? I don't.
99.
99. We'll call back in 2 episodes.
Yep. John Canzano, here he is, bald-faced truth. The 7:50 the game down there in Portland, Oregon. Brought to you by Zeeks Pizza. Visit ZeeksPizza.com for the best selection of local Northwest craft beers. Are you always amazed that people still can't pronounce it? Oregon.
Yeah. You know how when I don't know if you do this, but I do this. When people die, I don't delete their voicemail messages. There's something about having someone's voice on your phone. And so I've got on my phone these voicemail messages from people like Jerry Tarkanian, Rick Majerus. Like, I just can't bring myself to delete the message. And Majerus was the worst of all. He would say Oregon, and I'd say it's Oregon. And he'd go, yes, Oregon. And I go, never mind. But I can't delete those messages. And when you said that, I thought about Majerus. Yeah.
The Dennis Erickson's from Washington. He grew up in Everett, Washington. And Dennis, I mean, like his entire family. I mean, his dad, Pinky, is a legendary football coach. He still pronounces it Washington with an R.
I know. Kind of like that. I like that. I like that about some of these old coaches.
Have
do. Your quirks. Have your nuances.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All right, we got some news here. So the kickoff times have been announced, some of them, for both Oregon State and Washington State. And, of course, you broke the news that they would be working with the CW Network and also Fox. So the Cougs opening game against Portland State, the hotbed is the Vikings, will kick off at noon. How about that? Noon? It cuts into my tailgating. I'm not going to lie to you. That's like 9 o'clock in the morning getting up there ready
You're
to
like
go.
One of these people that complains when the weather's cold, and then when you get sunshine, you're like, it's so hot. You know, you're like that 4-degree variance where
you're
too late, too early.
It's just, I like a 2:30. Okay, the Texas Tech, they haven't announced that one yet, right? That's to be determined, Fox or FS1. The Apple Cup still doesn't have a kickoff time. We get our first night game against San Jose State on family weekend. It's a 7-o'clocker on the CW. No start time yet for
By the way,
Boise.
that San Jose State game is a Friday night game. So that is the only Friday night game on the schedule. So I think that works for family weekend, having a Friday night game. Then you get all day Saturday with your kid. No?
Yeah, but I mean, it's whatever. It's a problem getting there. I get it, but it's, you make it. I didn't even realize that was a Friday game. So Friday at 7 o'clock against San Jose State, the Spartans. Thank God it's family weekend. Or first of all, I didn't even know they changed it. I think that's Dad's weekend. Yeah. Dad's weekend in the fall, Mom's weekend in the spring. Okay. We could spend another 40 minutes on that.
I need to understand that.
Jesus. Well, it's everything's got to be equitable.
Yeah. All
right. Boise State, no start time. At Fresno State, nothing. Homecoming against Hawaii. Are they the Warriors or the Rainbows?
Rainbow Warriors. So you can call them Rainbows. You can call them Warriors.
Okay. 12:30 or 7 o'clock. When will they determine that? Is it like 2 weeks out?
2 weeks. 12 days. 12 days before those games. There's two games that are kind of floating. Either it's an early kick or a late kick. Now, these were the 2 games we talked about last week where we said, Oregon State, Washington State, it kind of set the kickoff times. Washington State went, hey, wait a minute, you have more early games than we do. As a concession, they decided that 12 days before those 2 games, they will just determine who gets the early game, who gets the late game. Team with a better record is going to get the early game. All things being equal, I don't know, maybe they let the CW pick it, but I kind of expect that Washington State is going to end up with those early kickoffs. I think they're going to have a little better record early in the season.
Yeah, and then the other one, you mentioned Utah State. That's another one at home, 12:30 or 7:30 on the CW. And then at Oregon State in beautiful Corvallis, 3:30 kickoff in the CW. And then they wrap up November 30th at home on the CW, 3:30. How does that compare to Oregon State?
Oregon State has a few more early games. They don't have a Friday night 7 o'clock. I looked at Oregon State's schedule, and it looks like aside from those 2 games that could float, Oregon State has 1 late kickoff. Washington State has a maximum of 3 late kickoffs if all things break, the wrong way for them, at least in the games that were announced. The Fox games, it'll probably be on FS1 or Fox, depending on what Texas Tech and Washington State do. And then the one that surprised me a little bit was the Oregon State-Washington State game, because I was told early on Fox wanted that game. I was told just before the release this morning that it was CW all the way. CW really wanted that Washington State-Oregon State game as part of the package. The Pac-12 does not want the perception, I think, that Fox backed away from the game. It was more like CW said, we have to have that game. And so I think all in all, you get 100% linear distribution, get you get every TV household in America that wants to watch the Beavers or the Cougars can watch them. Those are wins. The finances, I don't think they're going to blow you away. Everybody's playing it close to the vest. I did some public records requests today. I expect it's going to come in around 5, 6, 7 million, 8 million maybe per school. But, Bob Thompson, the former Fox president, said, forget the money. The money's not important. This is about staying visible right now in this important time for these 2 schools.
Yeah, I mean, there was no way they were going to get a bunch of money. I mean, there was as long as they have just a place in which people can watch them. I agree with Bob. That's certainly the most important thing. When do you think we hear about the other start times? When will we find out about the other games?
Well, Fox just started with their TV partners for the Big Ten. With they have NBC, they have CBS and Fox. They started drafting their games. We saw some of their big noon kickoffs released earlier. So as Fox gets down the way, I expect that Texas Tech and then that Oregon State Civil War game, we're going to get those late, I think, because I think they're going to go through all of their Big Ten games before they kind of circle back to those 2 games. They could end up on FS1. Fox is going to do what's best for Fox in those situations. So if Texas Tech is pretty good, you might get to see them. That game might trend earlier. And if they're not, that could be a 7 o'clock kickoff with, remote broadcasters how do we know? But all in all, I think it's a win. I think, the package is a deal, better than expected. I think industry people are saying, hey, look, they got great distribution. The ACC games that were on the CW last year didn't get great numbers. There was one Florida State game that got more than 1 million people. Everything else was under that. But the thinking was nobody was used to or conditioned to watching them on the CW, and they weren't great matchups. They were kind of the leftover games. What they're going to do with those this year is, that ACC game will be on in the morning. And then that 12:30 or that 3:30 that you're seeing on the schedule there will be right after the ACC game. So you may get some audience that kind of sticks around nationally to see what the Cougars and the Beavers are about. But Jake Dickert told me he got a look at the early schedule, and he said, I loved seeing the 12:30s and the 3:30s because he was expecting 7:30, what network. This was far better than I think a lot of them expected.
Yeah. John Canzano, you are the best, and everybody knows you're the best. That's why you got the news and information, and that's why you had the CW network before anyone. I just like the cross-promotion with One Tree Hill and all the other great shows that they have there on the CW network. How about... I mean, this is college sports now and athletics, and I get it, but this great Osabor, this new basketball player for Washington, who's a nice player. I mean, he was the Mountain West Player of the Year, so I mean, he's good. $2 million apparently in an NIL deal. That's a combination of what his agent is doing across the pond, because you got to remember there's different rules for, quote, international players. They fall under different guidelines than American players. So it's a combination of what his agent's been able to do in Great Britain and then what Montlake Futures is able to provide him. But it's on the record, according to reports, the most money ever given to a college basketball player, $2 million. One, do you actually believe the figure?
No, I don't.
Neither do I.
But I think it's probably a big number. But all of these agents and the interested parties from that side of the negotiation are inflating numbers right now. And it may be that that's the totality of the deal over the length of term, or maybe there's some incentives built in there that could get him to $2 million if he's the National Player of the Year and they win a national title. Who knows? But I don't believe for a minute that those numbers are accurate. I've talked to athletic directors across the current Pac-12 footprint. 5 or 6 of them are telling me that when they have an agent who comes into the room and talks to their collective and says, hey, I'm getting $750,000 or $500,000 is the going rate for this player, they have to fact check that, and they're making calls and finding out that the handlers and the agents are not telling the truth. So surprise, surprise.
Shocker.
And that's become part of the job of an athletic director or a deputy AD in a department, is kind of vetting those offers. So I don't believe for a second it's $2 million, like in a bag somewhere, but it's kind of like these NBA sneaker deals. Damian Lillard's deal with Adidas was announced as a $100 million deal. Well, I later found out that's if he's MVP of the league every year and they win the NBA championship every year. It's more like a $40 million deal. So, I still think he got a nice deal, and you got a new coach at Washington who's getting a player who's very familiar with him. This is a win-win. But like a lot of people, I had to Google this guy and go, okay, who is he? What's his name?
Yeah.
What's he getting? Like, I think he's probably getting better than expected, but I have to think there are players out there that have better face value deals.
There has to be. There is no way this kid, who is a virtual, and he just is an unknown in college basketball, is getting the most amount of money in college basketball. There is no way. And it's just not an accurate number. Remember Jaden Rashada, the commit, who ended up going, he eventually went back to Arizona State, but remember went to Florida. Remember what it was rumored that he was getting? $13 million. Yeah. It wasn't even remotely close. He didn't get anything even close. I don't even think he got $1 million. So
the ones you gotta watch, the ones you have to watch, it's not the ones we all hear about. It's what did Bo Nix get at Oregon? Because nobody's saying. Like, Division Streets and that's a 7-figure number. What did Michael Penix Jr. get to come back to Washington? Those are going to be big numbers. And it's almost like this is an athlete that, his agent wants it out there because the agent wants to represent other players who say, I'd like to have $2 million. This is good for Washington for this to be out there in the way it's been presented, because Washington will be like, yeah, we're paying players. We're involved. We matter.
Yeah.
But the truth is often that, these agents and handlers are fudging.
Which we're open for business. I mean, I from a marketing standpoint, Mountain Lake Futures, they played it perfectly. I would be pumping this up nonstop because it sends a message to these people. Hey, we're open for business. We'll pay for players. We're right up there. We're going to the Big Ten. We're not going to take a step back whatsoever. But
it combats Oregon directly too, because that's the perception that Oregon has a bigger war chest.
Yeah,
this is a blow back at Oregon.
I don't know when it comes to like Michael Penix. I mean, because the rumors have always been it's like $2 to $3 million, right, for Michael Penix. That's just the rumors. Why not advertise it if I'm Mountain Lake Futures or I'm the collective at Oregon and say what Bo Nix got? I don't know why they just come out and say it.
I don't know. And Oregon has always operated that way. Like, there are a lot of collectives that I reach out to, and they love to talk. The Boulevard at SMU, they've got a bunch of petroleum families that are involved in that. The good old boys at SMU are happy to tell you, we'll write the check, and great quotes. And the Cougar Collective, the Sun Devil Collective, the Sun Angel Collective, the Beaver, Damnation Collective, they all want to talk. I reach out to Division Street, it's crickets. They don't want you to know. They don't want to have a conversation. They're like they're doing this in their own way. It's a very Nike influenced thing. And I wouldn't be surprised if what Bo Nix got from Division Street isn't just the cash, but it included all the billboard advertising.
Mm-hmm.
It was a whole marketing pitch that helped elevate his profile and make him a first-round draft pick.
Here's the one thing, and then we can move on from that. I would have a concern if I'm Washington, Mountain Lake Futures, Danny Sprinkle, and Great Osabor. First, before we move on, great name, by the way.
Great.
It's just a phenomenal name.
The names matter. Think about that when you name your kid. It does matter. Like Malcolm Gladwell did something on that where, if you have a name that is, you don't want to name your kid Adolf, because it creates stress in your kid's life. It creates some stress in your kid's life, unnecessary stress. So, great. There's a little bit of branding there from go.
I mean, and then you dress them up at 6 in like in a Third Reich uniform. I just don't, it's stuff crosses a line at Halloween. All right. So here's the thing that with Osabor and I think with Danny Sprinkle, here's the only thing I would say that they didn't think this through. This puts a lot of pressure on the kid because he's now the $2 million man, and he'll be regarded as that from every opponent he walks into. Every team that he walks into in the Big Ten, every coach, every fan base, They are going to be giving him shit every single time. And if he doesn't deliver, John, people are going to rain on him, including the Husky fans themselves. And I think that's a lot of pressure for a guy who, again, I've watched him play. He's a very good player. He's not an elite player. And there's a lot now that he's going to have to put on his shoulders carrying this $2 million mantle around town.
Now, also, think about recruits in the next class who come in and go, hey, wait a minute. That guy got $2 million, even if the number's not right. If it's heavily based on incentives and other payments that are coming from outside of the Montlake Futures, you've got recruits who are going to come in expecting that they are 7-figure and he got $2 or $3 million. I want $4 million.
Yeah.
I think you're going to run into a little bit of that. It also potentially causes some problems in the locker room. We've thought about this from the beginning, and I think people waved it off during last college football season, said, hey, it's working. You've got players that are making just, there's great disparity between what they're making. It's not been a problem. Well, not yet. But the athletes are getting savvy now. They're far more evolved. They have really, it's like a kid learning on an iPad. We're watching the athletes sort of learn the system. And I started out where I was talking with athletes and they were just negotiating deals with small businesses. Now they've got agents and handlers involved, and they know how it works.
And the agents are in their ear telling them they are worth more than their teammate, which then is going to create a friction and animosity, and it's going to divide the locker room. I mean, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the absolute tip of the iceberg. And all these people that wanted it, it's be careful what you wish for, because it's going to be on the rise, because you're right. Because they're all hired guns now. There's no continuity anymore. There's no these kids coming in at 18 and staying there for 3 or 4 years. Look at this guy, and I'm sure he's a fine guy. He's a hired gun. Montana State, Sprinkle leaves, Utah State. Sprinkle goes to UW, he goes to UW. If he had another year of eligibility and Sprinkle went to LSU, he'd go to LSU.
Yeah.
Because he's just going along with him.
He's going with his coach. Coach knows him. It's not dumb.
Look, no. And I'm not saying it. And I'm not saying it's wrong, because, I don't know if you agree with this. These kids sign with the coaching staff. I always hear, well, you're signing for the school. No, you're not. You're signing for the coach that recruited you, or the position coach if it's football. That's who you're signing with.
Yeah, and that's why it's so difficult when a coach leaves. Kalen DeBoer leaves. Jonathan Smith leaves. And suddenly everybody goes, the players, Aiden Childs ends up at Michigan State. It's no surprise. He committed to Jonathan. And in fact, Aiden Child's parents told me, they said, in Jonathan we trust. So you're right about that. It's the coach that recruits him. It's that relationship. I think it is, in a weird way, driving some of the coaching salaries. There are a whole bunch of programs out there that are afraid of a coach leaving. Yeah. I think we saw a lot of premature extensions, raises, raising buyouts. I don't know if it's going to be enough in some cases, but, everybody's kind of worried about having to make a hire. And in particular at Oregon State and Washington State right now, where you're in kind of a precarious position anyway.
Well, I didn't even have this written down, but I'm just curious real quickly, and we can talk more about this when we get into the closer to the football season, college football season. How do you think DeBoer will do in year one?
I have him down at 7 wins. And I think, I think he's going, I think there's going to be a little bit of a hangover there. Nick Saban didn't leave Alabama because he was tired. He looked around and went, I can't do it at the level that I've done it at. And so I think even if Saban was coming back, a little bit of the shine was coming off. But I think DeBoer is going to struggle a little bit. I think they're going to lose some games that they should normally win. He has won everywhere he's gone. He may prove me wrong. But I think, I talked to Mario Cristobal. I've talked to other coaches about, what happened at Alabama and Saban leaving. And the kind of the prevailing thought among the coaches was that, the game had changed, and the advantage that Alabama had where it was positioned, had been negated in some ways by NIL and the portal. And so let's see, but I think even Saban was going to look at, was it going to be a 9-win season for Nick Saban? So 7 doesn't feel crazy to me, but Kalen DeBoer is a smart guy. I just don't think they're going to dominate the way they've dominated.
The story that came out last week. So UCLA is going to have to pay Cal $10 million a year for the next 6 years.
Well, if the trustees, if the regents, the UC regents approve that was the recommendation by Michael Drake, who's the president of the regents. He said they went for the full 10 mil. That was, they had originally set a range from 2 million to 10 million. I think that number's interesting. because $10 million a year, that's $60 million that right off the top that UCLA would have to pay to Cal over 6 years. But that's the same number that Oregon State got from the Oregon State legislature. They got a $10 million sort of distribution to help with athletic scholarships. So I think that the UC Regents and the Oregon State legislature are looking at the same data and saying this is a $10 million problem that has been created. Now, they're going to vote on that. That vote is this week, so we'll get that officially. But I start to wonder at what point UCLA regrets this move, because you're talking about $10 million, $12 million in travel expenses, $10 million possibly to Cal, $4.5 million in, they're calling it student diet and nutrition that they're going to have to come up with, extra food to feed the athletes that are traveling. There's about $3 million in mental health services that they're going to offer. And you start to go, okay, wait a minute, they're getting $65 million, but if you start, taking away all that money, they're closer to like in the low 40s, high 30s. That's what they would have got had they stayed in the Pac-12 and the LA TV market was part of the Pac-12 deal. It just, at some point, I expect, Bill Walton's going to emerge and go, I told you the answer wasn't in the Midwest. This is horrible.
Horrible. So I want you to, because you kind of said it real fast and people are like, whoa, what happened? Explain what Oregon State received from the Oregon legislature.
So Oregon State, never done this before. The president at Oregon State, Jyoti Murthy, and the athletic director, Scott Barnes, went to the Oregon State legislature and said, this Pac-12 breakup has caused dire financial consequences for our athletic department. This is not sustainable. We need help. Now, the state legislature funds education and has, in different points been sort of anti-sports, or that's the view of it, that they haven't really supported sports entities, properties, investments in infrastructure until this year. Now, it may just be that there was a shift in thinking, because they did give some money to the single A team that is building a new stadium out in Hillsborough, building a brand new facility, gave them some money as well. But Oregon State, on the final day, got a $10 million distribution from the state legislature. It's earmarked for athletic scholarships. So Oregon State will have an extra $10 million in their coffers. And I expect Washington State saw that and will also be asking the state legislature for some assistance. Is
there anything in the works? Have you heard anything about that?
I haven't heard anything on that front, but the only thing I've heard is that a couple of lawmakers noted it and asked me about it from the state of Washington. So I think that they're of course paying attention to what Oregon State does. They're sharing notes. Oregon State picked up $10 million there. That's really going to help them kind of offset, right, this media rights deal we talked about. They're not going to get the $25 million that they got a year ago. They might get $5 or $7 or $8 million. Well, here comes another $10 million into your pocket. So that helps.
Hey, on the one of your latest pieces up there at johncanzano.com, you wrote about Mother's Day and just how important. Yeah. You briefly touched on your mom, but you talked a lot about your wife, who's the CEO of the household, like every single mom is the CEO. What do you, when you were growing up, though, more about your mom, what was she like as a sports mom?
Man, so my dad was a professional baseball player. So he was in AAA with the Mets in 1969 when they won the World Series. And they had traveled all over, the Carolina leagues. And, he was on the East Coast in spring training in Florida. And my mom and dad, like a lot of people of that generation, they married at like 20 and 21 years old. Like they were just kids. I look back at that, Puck. They had 4 kids. My dad had 4 kids. He was 25 years old. And I was 25. I couldn't even dress myself. Like I'm thinking about that.
I was still doing keg stands at 25, for God's sakes.
Right. And so my mom was, she was my dad's sidekick. And they traveled the country. They had this red Volkswagen bus. They put my crib in the bus. And so my mom said that they would just drive from like spring training up to Tidewater for the AAA season. And I was bouncing around in the back of that Volkswagen bus. But my mom, neither of my parents graduated from college until later. My mom, after raising 4 kids, my memories of my mom growing up are she was always there for sports games. She was folding laundry forever, making lunches. She was that mom, right? But she didn't get her dreams. She deferred all of her dreams. And so like when we all graduated, left the house, went off to college, she went to college with my younger sister, same time. They had classes together, Puck. Can you imagine that? I would have been a nightmare. I would have been sitting there like.
Did she like bring her lunch to the classroom for her?
My sister said my mom sat in the front row and she was that student, like raising her hand and everything. But my mom became a nurse at like, age 45 and with, 4 kids out of the household. And, she became a mother baby nurse in a hospital and worked that. She's retired now, but she finally got to do what she wanted to do. It's almost like she had these 2 different lives as, a young mother and then decided, hey, what do I want to do with my life? But so that's what I think about on Mother's Day.
She was a good, after your games, a good pep talk.
Yeah,
a little bit.
It was more my parents were interesting because my dad had played, so he was not vocal at games. He was that guy that was like down the right field line, watching the game, not saying anything.
Well, he's saying something. It's just under his breath. That's what. God, son of a bitch! Just get your goddamn glove down.
It would be like one thing on the way home that he would bring up, like, "Yeah, what were you thinking on that pitch or whatever?" And I got something from him that I use today with my kids. It's a little psychological thing that I do with them because we all know this is like mind tricks when raising kids.
Sure.
But he would always say to me, I had a lot of fun watching you.
That's so funny because I had someone say that to me yesterday about that. They relayed the same thing and they got it from somebody. And they said that was the thing that they would always, that this person either said or wrote about. I had fun watching you today. Yep. And that was it.
So I say that now. My kids kind of blow me off, but maybe they'll remember it one day.
Okay.
But my grandfather was not that way at my dad's games. I think that made a difference. He had a thing. He would yell. He had like this bullhorn. He was that parent, and it embarrassed my dad. He remembered that.
Okay, so speaking of that real quick, because I talked about this yesterday, and I experienced this kind of for the first time. My son's 10, and so this is his first year. In addition to Little League, he's playing a club baseball team.
Okay.
So we had a tournament this week, a 2-day tournament, bombs for moms. Because as the tournament director said, I know you moms, there's no other place you'd rather be on this weekend than watching your son play baseball. And every mom I talked to said, F you, because I'd rather be getting a pedicure and a manicure, not doing this. But okay. Yeah. I witnessed not one, not two, 3 different teams, 10U, so 10-year-olds.
Okay.
With coaching staffs in full uniforms. Now, John, I'm talking about all of it. The pants, stirrups, cleats, all of like they are getting ready to play a game, and then all of them look the same. 6 foot, 40 pounds overweight. The pants are just skin tight on them, and they're running around like as if they're about to get in the ball game. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Why do grown adults think it's okay? And I don't even think this is okay in Major League Baseball, by the way.
Somebody needs to pull them aside and say, hey, your time ended. You're out here coaching, instructing, teaching.
Stupid.
It's no longer about you. You shouldn't be in uniform. And by the way, this is not the big leagues. Like, you're not in a big league stadium. And so look around, read the room a little bit.
Yeah.
Anybody else dressed here like they're playing in the game when they're not? No. That's embarrassing. By the way, I got to say this.
Yeah.
Your kid's 10.
Yeah.
Bless you. You're supporting your kid, whatnot.
Uh-oh.
Don't get sucked into, though, this club industry where they sell you on the idea that your kid will fall behind if you go on vacation, or your kid will fall behind if you're not doing the private lessons or working with strength training. Let your kid be a kid. I've been through it. We have the older daughter who did club volleyball. She's now in college. And the mistake I made was right around 12 or 13. She should have been let's take a summer off. And let's just be a kid. And instead, she did all the camps, and it was in gyms and working out, private lessons. And really, by 15, she was kind of psychologically burnt out on it.
Yeah.
So just remember that, don't get sucked into it's optional, but understand your kid will fall behind. Nonsense.
Great advice. Yeah, we at this age, and I don't know if we'll do it next year. It's been kind of up and down, I would say. But anytime we've ever had, and there hasn't been many, but anytime there's been a choice between, Little League and club, the default is Little League. Those are the rules. But no, I'm with you, because there is, and I'm aware of that, but I want to continue to be aware of that. Yeah. There are parents I know that get caught in the trap, that they feel like, oh my God, if we leave or we don't do this, he's going to get left behind. And it's amazing. Kids that you see at this age at 9 and 10 and 11 who are like the best kid on the team, and you're thinking, oh my God, I can't wait, when they're 18. A lot of times those kids aren't good at 18. It's the kid that's kind of okay now and like, oh, he kind of hits the ball, and then 3 years from now you're like, oh my God, what happened to him? Growth spurts and all that. And it's a crazy industry, but
the objective is learn the fundamentals, right? We know that, but that's boring to the kids. Learn the fundamentals, and then the real mission is you make them want to come back the next day.
Yeah.
And so it was the mistake we made. Like, she was 13 and she had played, and the club she played on won the region. It was great. 2 of the players in her club, one's at Oregon playing on the volleyball team, one's at Washington playing on the volleyball team. They were fantastic players at age 12, and guess what? They made it. They got D1 scholarships, but it was not by the time they were freshmen in high school, those were the only 2 players who were still playing among 12 on the roster. And I thought, what happened? We should have just let them be kids.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Your mailbag too. You're in your mailbag section. Someone asked, and it's amazing to me because, I'd spent time down there and I know what the dynamic is between Portland and Seattle and all that. Yeah. But someone had asked you, hey, would the Blazers leave and go to Seattle? Is there still among Blazer fans a fear of that happening?
There will always be. There's an insecurity. There is a big brother complex, whatever you want to call it, sister city complex, rivalry. The fact that Paul Allen and Jody Allen are Seattle people. Bob Whitsitt was a Seattle guy. Remember when the Blazers had, Paul Allen owned the team. Nate McMillan, Mr. Sonic, was coaching the team. Brandon Roy was the draft pick. Jamal Crawford. It was like everything Seattle that was on this roster. It was like the Space Needle was going to show up next. Like, it was just like, extension of Seattle's backyard, Portland. But there's this real fear among Blazer fans that, like, someday it was first Paul, now Jody, that they will try to move the franchise to Seattle. But the problem with that is that, the NBA owners, the rest of the owners, already view Seattle and Vegas as the 2 expansion cities. It's the worst kept secret in the league. They're also saying, hey, it's going to be about $5 to $7 billion in expansion fees. Those owners are not going to want to give that up and allow a team that's got a viable fan base in an arena that still works. There's no problem with the Blazers other than the product, and they're not going to allow that team to cannibalize half of those expansion fees. They're not going to do a relocation there, but I think Seattle will get a team. Vegas will get a team. And as soon as Jody Allen lets the Blazers out of her stranglehold, they'll find some good luck.
Yeah.
Come on.
I would say this to all the Blazer fans, and if this is just from one Seattleite and one Sonics fan, I would never want that team. I would never want the Portland Trailblazers to ever leave Portland. Having been down there, knowing the relationship between that city and that fan base, and it's got deep, deep, deep roots, I would never. But there are people up here that do not care, that would say, I don't care. We got a team taken from us, so I don't care who we take. I don't fall into that category. I wouldn't want it to happen. I
remember when Clay Bennett bought the team. Remember when that group bought the team? I happened to be in Seattle that game. There was a game that happened right after that announcement that this ownership group was coming in, and the Blazers were playing the Sonics, as I recall. And I was in the building, and he had gathered all of kind of the employees who were there for game night, game operations people, arena people, and he was talking to them. Now, I didn't hear everything that was said, but kind of the prevailing message was, hey, we're not moving this team. We've come in, we're going to run it as good stewards. And we all knew, everyone knew what was happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, hey, Blazer fans, we're not coming. I'm not coming for you. All right. Yeah. And it's never going to happen. So don't worry about it. They're never going to leave Portland.
But Portland fans, I mean, even the draft lottery happens, and the worst case scenario was they could end up with the 7th pick and the 14th pick. That's what happened. It's just like pass the beer nuts.
Oh God, it just stinks. What did they have, an 84% chance
of getting one of the top 6 picks? And then they ended up 7th. And then the spin immediately from the apologists is, well, there was no great player in this draft. You're going to pay the 7th player less than you would pay the first player. That's such a loser mentality. Like, just come on, just go. Hey, it's better to have no luck than bad luck, right? Like, this is a franchise that is cursed since Sam Bowie.
It is true. It is true. Although I would say I think you noted, hey, they made the wrong pick when it was Oden and Durant. I will just remember that when it was out, I remember a lot of people who liked Greg Oden.
Yeah.
But it's just, after the fact, you're like, it looks horrible.
Yeah.
But he was dominant in college.
Sam Bowie was the right pick. The Blazers had Clyde Drexler already. They passed on Michael Jordan. There would be a statue outside the Moda Center of Michael Jordan today if they decided, we're just going to pick Jordan. The other thing was, Oden Durant, Kevin Pritchard, the GM at the time, I got into his office it was a day or two before that draft. He was charged with making that pick. And I said, what do you think of Oden? And he said, whoever picks Oden's going to win 10 NBA championships. And I said, what do you think of Durant? He says, Durant's going to be a 10-time All-Star. Well, he got it half right,
Yeah.
And so they went with Oden, and it turns out Greg Oden wanted to be a dentist.
Is that what he is?
No, but that's what he wanted. Like, when he was interviewed, I'll never forget this. Like, they interviewed him after he got picked, and he said, I wanted to be a dentist growing up, but I grew to be 7 feet tall. And I was like, they got the wrong guy.
Can you imagine if, when his career is over, I'd love to know what he's up to now. And then he just went, to dental school, and he's a dentist? There's got no one that's ever that tall being a dentist. Has to be.
He's gone back to school. I know that. But,
okay.
There was so much expectation and pressure on that guy. And, he didn't. And when he was in the lineup and they had Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge and Oden, they had a fantastic record in the 60 games or so those guys got to play together, but it never.
The
never
Roy one's the killer. Brandon not being able to stay, because Brandon would have gone down as one of the best players in this league.
He was such a good player and a good person.
Yeah.
He was a true ambassador for a franchise that had a lot of tomfoolery and ballyhoo going on.
And he just was, and just all around, just a high basketball IQ and all of that. You wrote about, this is a fantastic story, and I have gone now down the rabbit hole on this guy. You wrote about this baseball player, this Japanese baseball player who has been compared to here's the two people he's been compared to: Shohei Otani and Barry Bonds. Now, he went to the same high school as Otani, correct?
Yes. Same high school in Japan.
Same high school in Japan. So Japanese-born player. Now, if he would have stayed over there and gone into the draft, he would have been the property, as many people know, because this is like Otani, this is like Ichiro. He'd have been the property of that team for 9 years. He elected, though, to come to the States. He's in college at Stanford. He's enrolled there. So now he can be eligible to go to the MLB in 3 years. It's a smart move on his part. Tell me more about, is it Rintaro Sasaki?
Rintaro Sasaki. He goes to the same high school as Otani, so he gets compared to him, but he grew up emulating Barry Bonds. He's 6 feet tall. He weighs 250. He hits left-handed. He's built like a refrigerator.
Yeah.
That's his square. I only saw a video. I haven't seen him in person, but saw a video of him in the batting cage. And then I heard a story when he was at Oregon State. So he travels with Stanford. He's not eligible to play. So when he has joined Stanford, he just turned 20-year-old kid. He can practice, but he can't play until next season. But he was taking batting practice at Oregon State, and apparently he was putting on a show. I mean, he was just spraying the ball all over the outfield bleachers and over the fence. And he's got incredible power. Hits for average, but he did a smart thing here. Stanford was surprised. Stanford didn't expect that he was going to go A, to Stanford, or B, even come to the United States. They thought he would just declare for the Nippon Japanese Baseball League and make millions of dollars over there. But the problem is, if he does, then they hold your rights, and then they have to sell you to a MLB team, and it can take years for a player to ever get over here. So what he did is he circumvented that system, and he called Stanford's coaches and said, I want to come. And, You've got Dave Esker, the coach at Stanford, who's like, he wants to come. So they took him and they said, okay, we'll take you. So he's enrolled in classes at Stanford. He's living in the dorms, and he has to play 3 years at Stanford before he's draft eligible. But he'd rather do that than do 9 years in the Japanese Baseball League, and he'll potentially be available for some NIL money here.
That's just incredible. I saw the picture and then of him, and unbelievable. I mean, it's just the swing, the size. It's I can't wait to follow more of it, and certainly follow him when he starts playing next season. As we record this on May 14th, it's a Tuesday. It's a huge night in sports because Caitlin Clark will make her debut tonight for the Indiana Fever. I mean, there's a lot of buzz on this one. The WNBA draft had its highest ratings of any programming in the history of the WNBA in 24 years. There is, her popularity is sky high. What are the expectations for her? Because I'm excited to see it tonight. My son's excited to see it tonight. They come and play here on the 22nd of May. He wants to go. He's never wanted to go to a WNBA game. Tickets to get in, the cheapest ones are $90 to get in. Although I'm excited to watch, but I'm also fearful for her, John, because there is a group, and it's specifically women media people, which is just odd to me. Former players that are just sitting by waiting for her to fail so they can pounce on her and say, see, told you we were right. She's not ready. And as much as we want to build her up, there's a group of these female media people, and not all female, and media people, and fans that just want to tear her down the first second she has any signs of a struggle.
Yeah, and some of it I understand, because you've got a generation of players who built that league, 2 generations really, that built that league, were stars at their own time, and nobody paid attention to them. And so really from their standpoint, they're looking and going, hey, this league was great before Caitlin Clark got here, and we're going to show her how great this league was. We're going to show everybody how great this league was. Now, I understand that part of the competitive personality, but I think the players and coaches and media people who are trying to tear her down before she's even played a game have to step back and go, look, the ratings for that women's NCAA tournament, you can talk LSU, South Carolina, Oregon State. There were some good stories, but there was a large faction of that audience that showed up for Caitlin Clark and now have followed her to the WNBA. This is great for the league. You have the Aces in Vegas moving their game against, Indiana from Michelob Light Arena has 8,500 seats to T-Mobile that has 17,000 seats. Like, that's happening everywhere. It's going to happen in Seattle. It's going to happen anywhere that there's a WNBA game. So I don't get the people who are rooting for her to fail. I think, great. You can say that there are tremendous players in the league and it's going to be harder for her to score. She's on a bad team. They had the number 1 pick for a reason. But this is a win for the WNBA, and I don't understand why people don't want to celebrate it.
Yeah, I don't get it, but I'm excited to see it and just kind of follow her and just see what kind of the ratings are and just see the impact that she can have on the sport, just not the people that like it, but for the sport, for people to bring new people in. You're the best. We've held you for too long. What do you got cooking right now up there at johncanzano.com?
I was working on a weird story today before this news broke, but of course I'll cover all the Pac-12 stuff, but the new Arena Football League, the state of Oregon's got a team. They're playing at the Salem Fairgrounds inside this livestock building. It's been an utter disaster. 4 teams have folded in the Arena League. Players are saying they're not getting paid. I just had a quirky piece going that I got interrupted by the announcement of the CW and Fox deal with the Pac-12, but that's coming down the pipeline, among other things, at johncanzano.com.
He is the best. johncanzano.com, Bald-Faced Truth, 750 The Game down in Portland. All brought to you by Zeeks Pizza. Visit ZeeksPizza.com for the best selection of local Northwest craft beers. Episode 97 in the books. Until next week, thank you.
Thank you, my friend.